Hey there everyone, this is Zach here. So in Mario Kart Wii, something you need to decide to do if you're using a bike is choose whether to do a wheelie or charge a mini-turbo. What people often do is they charge a mini-turbo if the turn lasts long enough, and if they need to barely adjust their line, re-hop and wheelie. However, deciding when it's faster to do what can be quite nuanced and depends heavily on the vehicle you use. In today's video, I'm going to explain how two contrasting vehicles, Flame Runner and Spear, handle this decision making, as well as a brief explanation on a few other vehicles. Let's begin by explaining the statistics of these two vehicles. Both Flame Runner and Spear are pretty fast compared to other bikes in this game. In fact, they're faster speed-wise than almost every vehicle in general. However, Spear's top speed is greater than Flame Runner's, which you can see between these two statistic bars. Funky Kong on the Spear tops out at 85.60 km per hour normally and at 98.44 in a wheelie, not considering other factors such as boosts from tricks. Meanwhile, on Flame Runner, he caps at 84.01 km per hour normally and at 96.61 in a wheelie, also not considering other factors. In addition, Spear has slightly more weight than Flame Runner. It also has slightly more acceleration. But Flame Runner has slightly better off-road and handling. None of these three stats are good for either vehicle though, nor do they vary that much, so that's not that important here. Where these two vehicles vary significantly though is their mini-turbo and drifting. As you can see, Flame Runner has much better drift than mini-turbo. With the drift, this means Flame Runner takes turns a lot more tightly than Spear. In the vanilla game, it can take them all while not slowing down if you approach them correctly. Meanwhile, with Spear, it has a much more difficult time taking certain turns, requiring some form of slowing down to make a few of them. Plus, Flame Runner's longer mini-turbo means you have more time to adjust your line while in it. With Funky Kong, it lasts for a total of 32 frames with the countdown starting from 31 here. It will continue going down until it reaches 0. Once it does, on the next frame, the speed boost that came about due to the mini-turbo will begin wearing off. The reason I bring this up is because while in a boost, there really isn't any speed loss that occurs if you decide to turn outside of a drift. Thus, you can delay your wheelie as long as possible and still get to top wheelie speed before the boost wears off. And even if you get into a wheelie early, you can still move safely to further improve your line. If your character has a mini-turbo stat boost like Wario, whose mini-turbo will last for an additional 8 frames, this means you have more time to adjust your line. With Spear though, the mini-turbo is very poor, only lasting up to 16 frames if you're using a character with no mini-turbo stat boost. This means you don't have much time to adjust your line outside of a drift while in a mini-turbo. This kinda turns Spear into a stick when driving it. You need to essentially be facing the direction you want to go before releasing your mini-turbo. There's one more key difference between Spear and Flame Runner I want to cover, and that's how fast it accelerates in a wheelie if they start at base speed. If Spear has to re-hop and start a new one, if you notice, it gains speed quite quickly, getting up to 98.44 km per hour before the wheelie cancels. Meanwhile, Flame Runner gains speed a lot less quickly, not even getting up to its top wheelie speed of 96.61 km per hour before the wheelie ends. Now that I've explained these key differences between Flame Runner and Spear, let's see how they affect their driving. If you watch the world record on Luigi Circuit, Cole adjusts his line and does a wheelie here before the ending shortcut. Meanwhile, if you watch the Flame Runner BKT set by Luke, he opts to charge a mini-turbo. The reason Cole goes for a wheelie is for the reasons I mentioned earlier. Spear can get to top wheelie speed pretty quickly. Meanwhile, if he opted to do a drift to charge a mini-turbo, he'd be going at 85.60 km per hour for a lot longer instead of well over 90. In addition, Spear's mini-turbo is very poor. This means it's way harder to get onto a good line to where you can get up to 98.44 km per hour more easily once you release it in wheelie. Plus, the fact it's so short means you're barely in a speed boost for any period of time. Thus, you're better off doing a wheelie in this case. In this comparison here, you can see how slow charging a mini-turbo is versus doing a wheelie right away. Meanwhile, with Flame Runner, doing a wheelie isn't optimal because it takes so long for you to gain much speed. Thus, you aren't going faster as much in a wheelie as you would be in a drift. In addition, the longer mini turbo stack gives you more leniency when it comes to charging it. You can be facing the wrong direction by quite a good angle. However, since the boost lasts for so long, you have plenty of time to adjust your line before getting into a wheelie and being at 96.61. Plus, the longer mini turbo means there's more reason to charge one. You're in some sort of speed boost for more time. This comparison here shows how similar a mini turbocharge in a wheelie can be, provided the run that charged the mini turbo wasn't at top wheelie speed for long. Note that in this example, I will be avoiding the curb like Luke does. When I edit Luke's run to do a wheelie, as you can see, it doesn't really gain or lose anything to him. However, what this wheelie does is set me up at a much worse angle than Luke for this shroom cut. As a result, I can't get the large airtime like he does, and I lose a lot of time at the shroom cut due to the shroom boost that lets me avoid losing speed to the off-road wearing off. And just to show that ideally doing a mini turbocharge here is faster, I'll be comparing two near perfect runs I have made via TAS. The Ghost will charge a mini turbo, and the other run will be doing a wheelie. By the time both reach the shroom cut, the run that does a mini turbo is indeed further ahead. Another example of this phenomenon is on Luigi Circuit. Back in the early days of Mario Kart Wii, the world record used to do 2 less mini turbos, opting to go for only wheelies on 2 parts of the track. One here at the start of laps 2 and 3, and another going around this statue of Baby Luigi and Baby Daisy all 3 laps, such as in this former world record set by Vayu. Eventually, this strategy changed to charging mini turbos instead. I have made another comparison using Flame Runner. The Ghost here does a wheelie like Vayu did, and the other run charges a mini turbo. By the time they both reach the first turn, the Ghost that only did a wheelie is quite a bit behind. Doing the same thing around the second statue, the same result occurs, though this mini turbo didn't save as much time as before, and that's because just like the comparison with Luke, it wasn't at a top speed wheelie for as long. Eventually, the world records for Luigi Circuit began using the character in the name itself. This meant they had to change to Mach Bike as well. Just like Flame Runner, Mach Bike is a fast vehicle with good drift and mini turbo. It's basically a counterpart to it, but for middleweight characters. However, this means they have similar drawbacks. Daisy on the Mach Bike can't get to a top wheelie speed of 95 if she has to start a new one. You either have to do something special like wheelie out of a boost or avoid a fully dropped wheelie. Because of this, Mach Bike users opt to do a mini turbocharge at the start of the lap, as well as around the second statue just like Flame Runner. And just to show this is optimal, here is a comparison of Daisy doing a wheelie versus a mini turbo. The run that only did a wheelie is further behind by the first turn. Let's see now what Dolphin Dasher does. At the start of lap 2, we do see that charging a mini turbo is faster, though not as much, and that's for 2 reasons. This vehicle's mini turbo isn't as strong as Flame Runner's. Normally, this vehicle has a 26 frame mini turbo, which is 6 less than Flame Runner's. And with Birdo, she grants an additional 8 frames for a total of 34. This means that with Dolphin Dasher, you won't be in a speed boost for as long, making this additional mini turbo speed not as useful. Plus, this vehicle gains speed in a wheelie faster than Flame Runner, though not as fast as Spear. With a rehop and a new wheelie, Birdo barely gets to a top speed of 92.35 km per hour before the wheelie ends. And with Spear, it's easy to see that doing wheelies around both the first turn and the second statue are faster. It gains speed in a wheelie pretty quickly, and its mini turbo is extremely poor, making charging one just not reliable enough. The Quacker is an example of a vehicle though that wants to go for a wheelie instead, and that's because like Spear, it gains a lot of speed in a wheelie quite quickly, getting up to 88.08 a fair bit before the wheelie cancels. This example also illustrates another factor when deciding to wheelie or charge a mini turbo. Unlike Spear, Quacker's mini turbo isn't that bad, and you can be facing the wrong way and still have enough time to wheelie onto a good line after releasing one. But the fact Quacker gets up to top wheelie speed so fast just nullifies this factor. So as we see, this concept isn't exclusive to Flame Runner or Spear, it depends on the vehicle itself, as well as what the track's layout is. Basically, experiment with whatever you decide to use and see what's more optimal. Generally speaking, if you can accelerate in a wheelie pretty quickly and or have a bad mini turbo, you're probably better off doing a wheelie if you need to adjust your line slightly. Meanwhile, if you're not in those situations, charging a mini turbo may be more optimal instead. And if the turn lasts long enough, you'll want to go for a mini turbo no matter what. There's one last thing I want to show. Going back to Luigi Circuit, if you opted to avoid the ending shortcut, it is very slightly faster to charge a mini turbo than to simply realign. And that's because you have to spend more time turning to get to these boost panels, thus incentivizing a mini turbocharge more. However, getting this to be faster requires near flawless execution. In fact, to make this scenario faster, I had to task it, going for a perfect turn in a very precise drifting technique on this curb. Then, I had to release the mini turbo on the first frame, and very quickly adjust my line with another drift to be perfectly angled for the boost panels ahead. But compared to doing only a wheelie, it saves next to nothing. Realistically, charging a mini turbo isn't going to be faster, and that's because getting the correct inputs to make this occur aren't humanly feasible in this situation. This shows there is some nuance when it comes to making this decision. If one strategy ends up being finicky to get while the other one is more consistent to pull off, you may want to stick with the more consistent method, especially for online play. And that's where I'll wrap it up. What this video demonstrated was how simple a decision like going for a wheelie right away when changing your line or deciding to charge a mini turbo can actually be. There are many factors that affect what outcome is ideal, but if you understand what you're doing, you can come to the correct decision more easily. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. I produce all sorts of videos on very specific topics in Mario Kart Wii, so if that's something that interests you, go ahead and do so. Thank you so much for watching everyone and have a great day.